Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're going to start in around a minute. While we're waiting for everyone to join, let's thank our visionary donors for making today's events and other Let's Talk Science programming possible. We would like to thank our donors, including Amgen Canada, the Government of Canada, Hibernia, the Mitchell and Catherine Barron Family Foundation, Rio Tinto, the Trottier Family Foundation, and also thank you to our event partners as well. Let's Talk Science, ArcticNet, the Canadian Space Agency, Genome Canada, the Royal Society of Canada, and the Stem Cell Network. Thank you so much for bringing us all together from across the country. So a little bit of housekeeping for today. Please use the Q&A button for questions, tech support, or comments, as you cannot message us in the chat. Or you can turn your closed captioning on as well with the CC button and send reactions using the reaction button. And hello again, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Health and Technology. My name is Conan, and I'm with the Let's Talk Science team. Thank you so much for joining our symposium. Today, we are all joining from various regions across Canada, which are traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of numerous First Nations that carry thousands of years of profound history. It is important for us to recognize and honor the stewardship of the Indigenous peoples who remain the original inhabitants of these lands. And I encourage you to visit native/land.ca to learn about the traditional territories you're located on and to research the many STEM contributions of Indigenous peoples. And if you'd like to share about today's symposium on social media, please tag us at Let's Talk Science on Facebook or X, or at Let's Talk Science_HQ on Instagram. And just so you know, we now have a discussion guide on the symposium resource page where you can engage in reflection and discussion with your peers. You can also submit your answers by the deadline and for a chance to win prizes and have your contributions featured on our webpage. If you want more information, you can contact us via email. So today, it is with great honor that we welcome a very special guest to moderate our symposium. Sean Silcoff is a technology and life sciences reporter at the Globe and Mail based in the Ottawa area. He is the winner of three national newspaper awards. And Sean is also the co-author of the book, Losing the Signal, the Spectacular Rise and Fall of BlackBerry, which won Canada's National Business Book Award and was shortlisted for the International Financial Times and McKinsey Business Book of the Year. Fun fact, his book was also adapted into the 2023 film BlackBerry. Sean, thank you so much for moderating our symposium today.
Well, thank you very much, Conan. I'm really excited to be here. So before I introduce our guests, let me tell you a little bit about me. I've been a journalist for most of the past 30 years, and I've had a chance to write about some pretty interesting things. I interviewed Harrison Ford. I've written stories from 4 continents and from high above the Arctic Circle. I even took my kid to work one day a few years ago to let her help me report for the day. I've covered just about everything you can think of. In the past month alone, I've written about a snowstorm, a plane crash, toilet paper, Kanye West, and Donald Trump. And for the past 13 years, I've worked for the Globe and Mail, where I spend much of my time covering the life sciences industry. So when you say life sciences, that's typically the business made up of companies that discover and develop new treatments or medical devices or diagnostics to test for things. So they can bring those to millions, billions actually, of patients. I think it's a topic every Canadian should pay attention to, especially students such as yourselves. And you'll have a chance to do that today. So more than a century ago, Canadian researchers discovered insulin. It was one of the most important medical breakthroughs in the history of the world. In fact, Canadians have made a lot of really important medical discoveries. We discovered stem cells and T cells, which have helped the researchers develop new drugs to fight infection, cancer, and autoimmune diseases. Canadians invented the pacemaker and also pablum, a baby food that helped improve health around the world. Canadians are also working on new ways to fight cancer, including radiopharmaceuticals, which target cancer cells with tiny nuclear bombs. The drugs destroy and clear out cancer cells from the body and have way less effects on the rest of the body than chemotherapy or radiation. Canadians are also developing technology to create tissue and organ replacements using 3D printers, as you will hear about today. And if you got a COVID vaccine, chances are it was delivered to your cell by a microscopic technology known as lipid nanoparticles, which were developed in the Vancouver area. So Canada's full of brilliant scientists who've made amazing breakthroughs. But there are also companies trying to develop those cutting-edge sciences so they can take them to the world and benefit human health. In fact, there are many companies located right here in Canada doing just that. They don't just employ research scientists and doctors, but also people who have studied business and other general fields. Many of them bring together scientific disciplines, including artificial intelligence, to create the therapies of tomorrow. And I've had the good fortune to write about a lot of these companies in the Globe and Mail. We're going to meet some of these people now and find out what they're doing. And maybe they'll give you some ideas about what you can do after you graduate. So before I introduce them, I want to remind you to please submit any questions as they come to mind to our speakers by pressing the Q&A button. We'll address as many of those as we can later in the podcast. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Tamer Mohamed. Tamer is a bioengineer and inventor, and he was named Entrepreneur of the Year for the Pacific region 2 years ago. His company, Aspect Biosystems, is kind of one of the coolest companies going in Canada. I'll let him tell you about it. It's one of Canada's most innovative, promising startups. 2 years ago, it struck a major development deal with one of the world's largest drug companies, Novo Nordisk. Tamer, why don't you tell us more?
Thanks so much, Sean, and really pleased to be here. I'm calling in from a place called Squamish. It's a small town here en route to Whistler from Vancouver. So had to take a quick stop to have this discussion that I'm really looking forward to. So maybe we could advance the slides here. I'll do that with me. There we go. So this is a photo that is many decades ago. So this was me many years ago. I've always been a geek. I still am a geek, and so I'm a big believer that the world needs more geeks to solve some of the big problems that are only increasing in prominence, from climate change to curing some of these significant diseases as we continue to grow older and want to stay healthier. To finding renewable energies. All of these big world challenges are going to be solved by geeks. So if you're a geek out there, the future is really yours to own, and we need more of you. So that is certainly a call out to all of you there in the crowd. But of course, to accomplish some of these big challenges, you really need a team, and that's lesson number one that I have learned, and I would certainly share. Our mission at Aspect to create 3D printed tissues that we're transplanting into the body, which sounds like science fiction, and I'll tell you more about that. We only stand a shot at achieving that mission with an outstanding team. So the photo on the left-hand side, this is the co-founding team, meaning the group of people that started our company, Aspect Biosystems. And you can see at the time we were still very much geeks in lab coats next to one of our first generation 3D printers that allows us to take cells and create tissue structures. But again, stand a shot at achieving what we're trying to do here, which is really challenging in so many ways. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that shortly. You really need a broader team that you could align around a common mission. And that's a common theme that I'll highlight throughout the discussion is you really need a tribe, you need a community to get to where you're hoping to get to. And that only increases in importance as the challenge that you're trying to solve increases as well in magnitude. So the image on the right there is our team at Aspect, over 100 people based in Vancouver, including several interns. I was actually in a welcome session yesterday where we were welcoming several of our undergraduate interns. One of them mentioned that 4 years ago he was I believe in grade 10, and he was watching a TED talk that I delivered, and that stuck with him, and he continued to follow the company, and 4 years later he's now an intern at Aspect doing some amazing things at the company. So I certainly hope that you take some form of inspiration from this and join Aspect in the not so distant future. All right. So what are we doing? What's our mission at Aspect? What we're trying to do is create what we call bioprinted tissue therapeutics. So your body does many different things. Your body has many organs that are responsible for critical functions that help keep you alive and healthy. But in some diseases, in many diseases, I should also add, several of these functions are lost. So for example, in your pancreas, as I'm sure some of you may have learned, conducts many different functions, but one of these functions is to monitor glucose levels in your blood. And if glucose levels are too high, that's very dangerous. And also glucose levels are too low, that's also dangerous. And so your pancreas does this critical function where there are certain cells in your pancreas, they're called islet cells. They sense the blood glucose levels, and when it's too high, your pancreas, through those islet cells, produces something called insulin. And insulin tells your body to reduce that blood glucose level to a normal level. But you don't want to produce too much insulin, because if you produce too much insulin, then your blood glucose levels will become too low. And so it's this perfect sort of Goldilocks situation that your pancreas has to manage. But unfortunately, in a disease called type 1 diabetes, those cells, the islet cells that we just talked about in your pancreas, are damaged. They're actually damaged by your immune system. Your immune system attacks these cells. We don't know why yet, but the end result is these patients that have type 1 diabetes don't have those cells that are monitoring glucose, producing insulin. And so patients have to rely on insulin injections. So what we're trying to do at Aspect is we're creating what we call a bioprinted tissue therapeutic. So this is a tissue that has those islet cells that are missing. And we put that into the body, and just like magic, these tissues sense glucose and release insulin from those cells within our bioprinted tissues. And I intentionally mentioned the word magic because as we begin to do some amazing things in the future, not just at Aspect, but as a humanity, a group as a whole, the line between magic and science begins to blur, because we could imagine doing things that only recently were seen as impossible. So definitely be curious at this critical age, and a lot of things that we thought were impossible are certainly possible with a lot of hard work and a lot of innovation. So maybe we could advance to the next slide. So how do we create these bioprinted tissue therapeutics? So we start off by designing these tissues in software. So we design these tissues, the appropriate shape and size. Then we want to transform that software design of this tissue into a real structure. And so we take living cells. So these are stem cells that we turn into either pancreatic cells or liver cells, depending on what types of tissues we're creating. But our body is not just made up of cells. They're made up of cells and other materials. Cells need a nice home to live in. So we take cells and all of those different ingredients, those different materials, and then we feed them through our bioprinter. So think of all of these input materials just like the color ink that you put inside one of your printers at home or at school. And then our bioprinter combines all of these living materials and the non-living materials, and then produces a final living tissue. So layer by layer, we recreate that tissue that we've designed in software. And so that physical structure that we've just created right in front of our eyes is living. So it has all of those cells that are capable of doing whatever function we're trying to restore inside of the body. In the case of type 1 diabetes, this tissue has those islet cells that are capable of sensing glucose and releasing insulin. And so our next job is to put it inside of a body. So we surgically implant these tissues inside of the body, and your body doesn't reject this tissue, because we design this tissue to shield the cells from the immune system, and the tissue does what it needs to do, which is it senses the blood glucose levels, So when you eat, your blood glucose levels go up. And so then your tissue sends a signal to produce insulin, and we're able to normalize your blood glucose levels so that these patients one day don't have to rely on consistent, regular insulin injections. Of course, pancreas is one example. There are many examples of other tissues and other organs in the body that we're applying this technology towards to ultimately restore functions that are lost in the body due to disease. So that's all I have for you, and looking forward to the discussions.
Thanks, Tamer. It blows me away every time I see it, and I had the good fortune of actually seeing it in person when I visited you in Vancouver, I think about a year and a half ago. Okay, so next, I'd like to welcome Chadwick King. Chad is Associate Vice President of Research and Site Head of Amgen's British Columbia Laboratory in Burnaby, outside Vancouver. In fact, all three of our guests are in the Vancouver area today. Amgen is headquartered in California, and it's one of the very few pharmaceutical giants that does early stage research right here in Canada. Chad leads a team responsible for the first step of discovery of new biologic therapies, which he'll tell you about more. They collaborate with other Amgen scientists around the world to turn their ideas into new medicines. Chad himself has contributed to the invention of 2 new medicines that are now helping patients around the world. Chad, thanks for joining us today. Chad, we can't hear you. If you could turn on your speaker. Thanks.
There we go. The double mute got me. All right, thanks, Sean. So yes, as Sean said, I work in the Discovery Research Group at Amgen, British Columbia. Our research site is located in Burnaby, which is a little suburb just outside of Vancouver. So I've been working for Amgen for the last 19 years. But before that, I am Canadian. I grew up in the Okanagan Valley, went to Penticton Secondary School, and I can only hope that there's a few of those students on the line today. So today, I have the incredible job of leading a team of scientists that focus on inventing new medicines that can help improve the lives of patients. We focus our efforts right at the first step of the discovery process, partnering with scientists that have ideas for new medicines that we can help them translate into a molecule that has the right properties. And that's what I wanted to tell you about today, is how we create those molecules. And so to do that, just trying to advance. There we go. To do that, the focus is really about antibodies, these Y-shaped molecules that you see on the screen. So antibodies are part of a natural part of your own immunity. They have a great ability to adapt to binding to any new target. And so why do you have these? Why are they part of our immunity? Well, as you go through the world, you get exposed to viruses and bacteria. You have to be able to protect yourself, regardless of what comes along. And so your body has many layers of defense. One of those defenses is your skin, just keeping things out. But when things get in, you actually need your immune system to adapt and block that virus or that bacteria or that pathogen, we call it. And so this is what my team can do. We can actually take what we learned from nature and actually recapitulate it. And we can make thousands and thousands of these antibodies. And the beauty of antibodies is we can really make them specific and selective to a certain target of interest. And you can imagine that if we wanted to target a tumor cell with an antibody, first we have to have antibodies that can recognize that tumor cell. Then we need them to detect a specific target on that tumor cell. And then we have to go further. We have to detect a small signature on that. And with antibodies, you can do that. And so that's what my team does, is create thousands and thousands of these antibodies. And then we look for the right properties that can become a drug, or potentially drug-like properties. And so the second thing we can do with these is we can really use them to disrupt normal biology. Antibodies can go in and bind to a certain target, and they can block the signaling between two cells. There's green lights and red lights in biology. Cells need to talk to each other. They need to turn things on and they need to turn things off. And those present opportunities to make drugs to actually interfere with that. Because sometimes in disease biology, those things are what's going wrong. Things are turned on, things are turned off, and we can turn them back on with these medicines and particularly antibodies are very good at doing this. The other thing we can do with antibodies, and Sean mentioned radiopharmaceuticals. Well, there's radiopharmaceuticals and there's chemopharmaceuticals. So what you can do is take an antibody, because of its selective targeting ability, you can put something else on it. You can put these poisons onto it and then very precisely target these poisons to the right cell. And when we're attacking a tumor and developing medicines that attack tumors, you want to be as selective as possible. You want to go after that tumor cell and not the rest of the body, and minimize the damage to the rest of the body. And that's what you can do with an antibody, because it targets it. It finds that specific thing and delivers that payload to the cell of interest. The other thing we can do with antibodies is they're remarkable. They're almost like Lego blocks. We can build antibodies and break them down into modular parts. For example, what's shown on the screen is what we call a BiTE, which is a bispecific. It's actually engineered to bind to 2 different things. And what we can do with that is actually target 2 different things at the same time. And in this case, we're targeting a tumor cell and a T cell. And so what we can do with that is pull in one of your own body's potent immune cells, the T cell, to the right spot. And once we can get that T cell activated in the right spot, it can kill the tumor cell. So there's a world of things we can do with these antibodies as building blocks and build them into different types of therapeutics. And that's what my team focuses on. And so speaking of the team, this is some of them working in our labs here in Burnaby. And I also mentioned on here, and we can come back to this in the discussion, some of the wonderful programs where I get to work with some of the trainees, whether they're in high schools or in universities. And so I'm happy to tell you more about that when we get to the discussion. So Sean, with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Chad. That's great. Loved how you made antibodies easy to understand. So before our final presenter, I want to remind everyone that we'd love to hear your questions. So if you have any, please just hit the Q&A button, and we'll try to get to some of them after the presentations. So finally, we have Brenda Irwin. Brenda is a managing partner of the Relentless Venture Fund, which is a North American life sciences health technology investor. That means she finances startup ventures, including Tamer's company, to help them grow into giants. Venture capital is high-risk investing, but it also delivers high returns. And some of those returns are improvements to human health. Brenda's a pretty well-known financier and business leader, also in BC. But before that, she was also a science and phys ed teacher. I love that. Brenda, why don't you take it away?
Great. Thanks, everyone. I am going to wait for the first slide to come up. There we go. Okay. Jeff, I'm not getting the message yet that I can advance. We're going to solve one brief technical difficulty here. There we go. Now I have it. Good. So what I'm going to do today is rapid fire go through my career, because I remember in grade 12, a guest speaker came to an assembly, a woman who talked about all the potential career options and to leave high school thinking about a multi-career life. I'd never considered that before, but it's definitely helped set my expectations in thinking around future leaving high school. So starting here, took every science, every math I could just to create a strong foundation of possibilities. I then got an undergraduate degree in science from the University of Guelph. In human biology, I minored in biomedical science, and you'll hear me talk about all the things I kept adding, because the more experiences and developed expertise created new possibilities for me in the future, yet to be determined. So human biology degree, biomedical science, but my first job was actually in marketing, before digital marketing, but using the right side versus the left side of my brain. And for Sean's interest, I worked at EMJ Data Systems, a hardware company run by Jim Estel. And in that experience, that was my first experience working in industry at the beginning of the explosion of the computer era. While I was there, I continued to go to school, There's another book here. I got a degree in English because I love to write and I loved Shakespeare. I knew I always wanted to be a teacher. So then I went to school and got a Bachelor of Education, ended up as a middle school science teacher, started out as a full-time phys ed teacher, and was also able to blend my love of sports. So I was the track and field coach, the basketball coach in Toronto, in North York. I worked for the North York Board of Education. I spent a few years as a teacher, but knew I still wanted to do more exploring of what was possible with my interests. I took my MBA, so there on the journey, another degree, Master's of Business Administration. And during that process, I met a professor and then worked for him in an internship. So you'll hear that come up a lot, where it was a volunteer experience working for a very wealthy man in Vancouver in exploring options for Indigenous youth and entrepreneurship. All of that preceded me in terms of education and experiences led to my start in venture capital. It wasn't predictable. It wasn't a typical path to end up as an investor in healthcare, but that's what I've now been doing for over 20 years. And I started in biotech. So some of the areas that Chad's talking about is where I started my career as a healthcare investor. And I worked for a bank at that time. And then I'm showing a completely different part of my career journey in that I started my own business. I raised money on my own to start a fund, the Relentless Venture Fund, to focus on investing in chronic disease management. So I now consider myself an entrepreneur because I took the risk of building my own business and making investments. And what's delightful for me today is to be here with Tamer. We first made an investment prior to even my venture fund in 2017. So it's exciting to share the stage here with Tamer today. So what is venture capital? Shameless, that's my buddy Bert. The easiest way to describe it that Sean already alluded to is high risk investing, for high risk opportunities for high return. And the other piece about understanding what venture capital is when we make an investment, it's different from typical finance. We actually then own a piece of the company. And that's what's really exciting and unique about the business and working with companies, including being on their boards of directors. So science and innovation shows up everywhere. And the ideas for new medicines, new software, even developing clean energy solutions start with a foundation in science. I'm going to just quickly note neurotech. It's one of the areas that we invest in. And this is showing a quick snapshot of what does that mean? It means brain health. Brain health challenges that individuals have as early as infancy and early in life with autism. Through later in life, you may have a loved one that has suffered through dementia and even having Alzheimer's. And if I can highlight one unexpected reality about aging and even being an older person, it is a fact that loneliness in seniors and being isolated accelerates ultimate end of life. So if you have an older adult in your life, please take the time to reach out to them because loneliness truly is a killer. And that's part of, we look at solutions that will help individuals live a better life at all stages. Before I go, I just want to note, in addition to education and science and the background in science, I also wanted to highlight one of the earliest career hacks you can do is volunteer for events. Try and find conferences through parents, through family that you can go and volunteer. And it's a very easy and unexpected way to learn about industries you're exploring before making a commitment, either education-wise or career-wise. I always highlight build your personal toolkit. When I took my MBA, I specialized in information technology because I knew that was important no matter what industry I ended up in outside of that degree. And then the third thing is always try and make sure to connect with individuals that could influence and open doors for you. Find champions, find mentors. It's tough, but if you're thinking about it with intention, then those individuals could help guide you towards the best fit for you, both academically and also professionally. So it's a delight to be here today. I love science. I loved being a science teacher. I love the fact that I spend every single day with innovators like Tamer, bringing new solutions for healthcare.
That's great. Thank you so much, Brenda. Okay, so now it's your turn. Over the next half hour, you get to ask questions, all of you who are watching, and you can still submit any that you have through the Q&A button. So Brenda, Tamer, and Chad, I'd ask you if you could all turn on your speakers and turn on your cameras. I'll direct some questions to you directly, but if you want to jump in on one or two, please feel free. So I think we'll start with a submitted question that came from Shelley and Christine. Thank you so much for sending this in. What should we study to be prepared to work in health and technology? What careers are available in biotechnology? Brenda, I think I'll throw that one to you first.
Well, I think that that's what I was trying to highlight around my different educational choices. In health and technology, there's an assumption based on your own experience, but the possibilities include even journalism. I mean, Sean writes a lot of deep tech stories that require some backgrounds too. I'm trying to think of different companies that are in the community. I can go through my portfolio where one of my companies, called Modality AI, everything about that product is they've created a virtual neurologist to help individuals with different neurological conditions, to engineering. And I know Tamer and his team, there's a deep background in different types of engineering. And one of the companies that we invested in creates smart insoles for individuals managing life with diabetic neuropathy, which means you can't feel sensations in your feet. So you get terrible sores and some have amputations. So I would say that peeling back the layers of different companies, two of our companies were founded by medical doctors. So they went through a career of medicine, started out in medicine, and then became entrepreneurs. So there's all kinds of possibilities. And if I could express one key message is don't overthink, just continue to build your toolkit of experiences and meet people. And like for me, even during my MBA, I didn't know what I was going to do after teaching. And now I've been an investor for over 20 years.
Thanks. This is a question from Doris and Callahan. Thank you so much for sending it in. I think I'll direct this one to Chad, but any of you can chime in afterward if you want to add to it. What jobs do you think will exist in a decade that don't exist today? What skills should students develop while they are young to be better prepared for the future?
Wonderful question, and not surprised that's on the minds of many. Where I would point to is we have to embrace AI, and so we are doing that in our day-to-day work and research. For example, we use artificial intelligence to help us predict safety signals. We want to make and discover medicines, but we have to have them safe in humans. And so we are training models to help us predict that. But what we are doing is incorporating and augmenting what we're doing with AI. And I think that is one of the best things that students can think about today, is embracing it and learning about it. And the access to information that you have now through the AI tools is incredible. And so from a productivity perspective, learn these tools. On your phone, you have access to the state-of-the-art models, whether it's Llama or Grok or ChatGPTs. Knowing how to interact with these is a really important thing to really extract the power out of the AI. So that's where I would start. And that really sets you up to then be able to go in different directions as the landscape changes.
Great. Tamer, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I fully believe in the statement. I can't remember who said this, but we often underestimate what we could accomplish in a decade. And so I would say things tend to happen super quickly. It may not be as apparent like on an annual basis, but over a decade, even if you just look at the last decade, the things that we didn't have back then that we have now, and once a breakthrough happens, it happens really fast. Adoption could be kind of exponential. And that doesn't just happen by accident. It happens because of a key point of innovation, and that could be you. You could be behind that innovation. And when I look at innovation over the next decade in particular, I think a lot of it is going to be interdisciplinary innovation, and I think gone are the days of silos, particularly in an AI world where AI is going to do many more things than it's doing today, and it's already doing an incredible amount. And so I would say as much interdisciplinary studies and learnings that you could get involved in, I'd recommend that. And I don't even just mean interdisciplinary science or engineering. Like I would say, understanding sort of the arts and economics. Take a few courses here or there, interact with those types of people. I think the curious minds, the interdisciplinary minds are the ones that are going to create that future. And I'll put myself on mute now because there's some background noise.
Thanks, Tamer. I want to send the next question to you, Tamer. We'll get you to turn that back on in 2 seconds. I want to combine a question from Diana. Thank you, Diana, with one of my own. Tell us, I guess, the first steps you need to do to actually become an entrepreneur. And in order to, this is from Diana, to supplement that, in order to be a successful business owner, what would be the top things that that students should know? Tamer?
Could you say that one more time? It glitched there. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, of course, for sure. So what are the first steps you need to do to become an entrepreneur? And in order to be a successful business owner, what would be the top things that students should know?
Yeah, I would say you have to firstly not be afraid of failure, and I'm sure you've heard this many times over. But what people really mean when they say that is you have to be willing to try something if you really believe in it, and not be afraid of the consequences of failing, because the reality is there are very little consequences at the very early stages of ideation and turning something into a company. And what you have to lose, especially at that young age, you have your life ahead of you, and so I would say having that sort of confidence and not being worried about what are the negative outcomes, but looking at the cup half full. Still getting, of course, feedback on your idea. I think that goes without saying, but it needs to be channeled internally in a constructive way. The other, I would say, key aspect, and I spoke about this at the earlier part of the session, is all about the team. When I joined sort of a research lab at UBC, I joined that lab because it was an awesome team. Of course, it was underpinned by great science, but it was an awesome team. People who I've learned a lot from. Like my background is actually in computer engineering and did my graduate studies in biology, and I learned most of my biology from my current chief scientific officer. So, I'd like to think it's vice versa. He's applying an engineering mindset to biology. So back to this interdisciplinary thinking. But yeah, if I were to sum it up in 3 things, number one, like very few things are impossible. What do you have to lose? And just having that can-do mentality. And number 2, just surround yourself with awesome people, good people, brilliant minds, but also good, decent people. And then number 3 is making sure that team is interdisciplinary and your mindset is interdisciplinary. Those have served me well in my journey at Aspect.
It's so interesting to talk about not fearing failure. And I think that's a common theme you see in technology, in biotechnology, is that the chance of success is very, very low. Brenda, I want to ask you about that. I mean, if I think about your job in a different way, you could say, well, your job is to take other people's money and spend it on things that might fail and probably mostly fail. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, why are people willing to spend money on things that have a very low probability of success?
Well, I think first and foremost, because of the possibilities of success, and as a health investor, it's a very, very difficult industry as a venture capitalist. There's far more uncomfortable and difficult days than there are light and joyous ones. But what drives me every single day in getting through the tougher periods is ultimately the success is going to improve health outcomes. Like that's what drives me. So when it comes to the high risk, and just for the students today, there's a rule of thumb in venture capital. If you build a portfolio of 10 companies, the assumption is 2 will be failures, like relatively quickly. 6 will be all right, and you'll have 2 successes and hopefully more than 2 successes. But the successes are the ones that are going to increase their value and be such extraordinary outcomes that they make up for the losses. So that's portfolio construction, and I'm writing an update for my investors now, and I'm doing a postmortem of one of the earlier investments that was a loss and why it didn't work out. I think it's important to have a conversation about why we made a decision, why it didn't work, and how does this impact the rest of the portfolio. So as a VC, my job is to make a risk assessment. I remember the day I met Tamer. Tamer and I met in a quasi coffee shop out at UBC. Just that it was the first time I met him. When I met him, I didn't meet Tamer with the intention of I want to find out what he's doing to invest in a company. I met him as part of a getting to know somebody in the ecosystem that was doing some pretty neat things up at UBC. And I am not exaggerating that when I left that meeting, I thought, how can I invest in this person? Because I loved meeting him. I loved what he was talking about in terms of the possibilities of 3D printing. And it was very early. The risk was very high. So you look at the people, you look at the need for technology and new innovations in a particular space, and then you look at what the innovation is. And so there's a long list of pretty predictable formula to be able to assess risk, and then you make a decision, is there enough of that risk mitigated to make a decision to make an investment? It's definitely a tough business, but people who are investing in a venture capital fund know that the risk is very high of losing money, but the winners in the portfolio will make up for that loss. And ultimately, if I can share one example from my former life as a biotech investor, over the course of 10 years and at least 12 rounds of financing for a company that had the first product in the clinic fail, the success was a cancer drug that now is on the market, and it took 16 years to get to market, but it is on the market treating elderly individuals with acute myeloid leukemia. That was the single success in my own portfolio when working for the bank, out of 12 biotech investments.
Wow.
And I am thrilled and often get emotional thinking about what it took to get there, but knowing that that drug is now on the market and available for cancer patients.
That's an incredible story.
Hey.
Chad, I think I want to ask you about something a lot of Canadians don't realize is just how big a center Vancouver is for antibody development. And I wonder if you could sort of look to the future. You know, the people who are in school now might be coming out into the work world in 5 or 10 years, let's say. Do you think that we're going to see more opportunities in the antibody business? Like, where do you think things go from here, from where you sit? Because I know you know a lot of the players in the Vancouver area. And also, I think maybe if you could add to that, is it just opportunities for, you know, the top scientists, or are there other things people can do if they're, you know, maybe not the top of the not the top of the class in science, but maybe they're, I don't know, they're good with people or good writers. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, speaking from someone who was not top of the class, I'm happy to take that question. But so biotechnology really is a cross section of many disciplines, and Tamer touched on this. We have immunologists, we have engineers, we have software data people. And that's just at a research facility. You go beyond that to a larger biotechnology company. We have lawyers, we have marketing departments. And so there's almost no career path that can't lead to a large biotechnology company. But back to the local Vancouver area, we have had, it's very exciting actually, the ecosystem in Vancouver that has grown up around protein therapeutics. We also have world-leading expertise in RNA. And that was mentioned in the LNPs through the work of Peter Cullis. So we have some really exciting things happening in the area. In the protein therapeutic space, there's still a lot of potential. So what we can do with proteins, not just as antibodies, but as I mentioned, build them into multi-specifics. We see companies do this. So yes, the answer is quite simply yes. We look for those experts in scientific disciplines, but then they're complemented by people that have additional skill sets and in engineering and robotics and automation and data. And so, and all of that is happening in Vancouver. And I'm sure Tamer has a comment on this as well, because his work is a cross-section of many disciplines as well in the tissue engineering space.
Tamer, do you want to add a thought there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think actually the last two questions are highly relevant. I think when I first started the company, we actually didn't have the type of ecosystem that we have now in British Columbia and in Canada. It often takes a couple decades to get to this exciting point that we have in British Columbia and in Canada, with several globally relevant companies like Aspect and Accelera and Xenon and Zymeworks. So there's something very interesting brewing, and all of these companies are based off of really interesting technologies. Many of them are backed by highly interdisciplinary platforms that marry engineering and biology, and it's happening in our own backyard. So this is an exciting time for all of you to look at the future and plan for the future, knowing that you may not have to go that far, and we certainly don't want you to go that far. Stay here, stay in Canada. And I think I could actually say that with some conviction now, knowing that there are some excellent jobs and careers that could be instigated here in Canada and continue and you could also be the next person that starts the company. And maybe just going back to another point that Sean mentioned about risk and life sciences being risky, and you're absolutely right. But maybe I could make one distinction to maybe sort of provoke some thoughts. I think actually there's a big difference between uncertainty and risk, and often people confuse the two. But if you look at many of the companies that are having a global impact now, before they became companies, and certainly before that idea, I would say a lot of people saw that as risky. But I would argue that could also have been uncertainty, in the sense that what we're trying to do, there's no certainty to it. I would say that the best opportunities are the ones that are uncertain with managed risks. And so I think, and that goes back to kind of interdisciplinary research, and we're applying an engineering mindset to biology, which means we're going after areas of biology that are well understood. So even though there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's where innovation and opportunity exists, it's managed risk, and we're mitigating that risk by applying an engineering, more controlled mindset to something that is as dynamic as biology. So the bottom line that I would encourage you to think of is always ask yourself, like, is this really risk? What kind of risk, or is it really uncertainty? And going back to that point about magic and science, like the future should sound magical and should be uncertain.
That's a great food for thought. And I just want to add something too. We've been talking a lot about Vancouver, but certainly there are really interesting, there's a lot of groundbreaking research and some really interesting companies also across the country. I've talked to, I'm just thinking about companies in Alberta. There are companies in Toronto and Hamilton. I met one a year or two ago in Ottawa. There's certainly a lot in Montreal. So While Vancouver has a lot, there's a lot of opportunities to stay in Canada and work on groundbreaking research with some interesting startups all across the country. I want to, there's a great question here from Daniel Mack High School medical students. I want to thank you for submitting this one. And I'll throw this out to whoever of you, the three of you, wants to answer this. How can we ensure that the new technologies are accessible to everyone, including underserved or low-income communities? Who wants to take that one?
I'll start. So one of the areas we focus on, even with Relentless, is we want to reach remote geographies, Indigenous communities, and isolated seniors. And isolated seniors could be in an urban environment or in a rural environment. And I think what's amazing about technology these days, and you may or may not have heard of a reference to something like remote patient monitoring, the COVID crisis created a shift in thinking of how are we going to care for individuals stuck at home and not being able to go in the clinic. So all of a sudden, while there was many years where people were trying to do something through telehealth, it was rejected. There wasn't a lot of supporting technologies, but COVID created, as a crisis, communities across the country, individuals in all of the ecosystems came together to figure out how do we reach individuals. And suddenly, for example, telehealth became at the forefront of what we had to figure out how to make certain people in all areas of Canada would have access to information and clinicians and experts. That included a surge even in individuals that wanted to seek mental health care. Nobody was doing mental health care through telephonic or video means before, but now it tends to be one of the go-to versus getting to an office. And that certainly has created a unique access to care in a very specific way. But I would say for those individuals in the question around remote geographies, there is a massive amount of work and innovation happening in digital health that is creating new ways to access information from an individual to care teams. Two in our portfolio right now have remote care as part of the core of their innovation. And so data from a smart implant, Canary Medical, the data is uploaded every day, and the care team can see, is this individual recovering from a total knee replacement in the way that they should be? If not, can we bring them in? And that helps individuals that would otherwise have to travel a couple of hours to go back and see a surgeon and be physically manipulated. There's a lot of a total I would say mind shift in healthcare that's creating access in ways that were never thought possible before. And I just want to add, if I may, Sean, that we're all based, the three of us that are speaking with you today, based in the human healthcare ecosystem. But I think it's also important when we're here to talk about science and careers in science that there is a phenomenal amount, and I touched a little bit on it in my quick presentation, but agriculture and food. I went to University of Guelph. My father wanted me to go into ag tech. I wanted to go in human biology, but there is all kinds of different areas within science that would be a completely different seminar to talk about. But just acknowledging that the joy of being in health, in human health, but so many other careers in science.
Anyone want to add to that answer? I'll move on to the next question. And we've only got a few minutes left before we wrap things up. So I'll just ask you each for a quick answer on this one. Is it hard to invest in or juggle family life if the work you do is so demanding and all-consuming? Do you have any advice, people, on how you juggle that? Chad, why don't you start?
That's an interesting question. And I think I would bring it to, on our teams, if we're going to do, the work we do is hard. And it was mentioned earlier, the probability of success is low. And so if you work in that industry, and that is what you're faced with in this relentless uphill battle to find drugs that can be really amazing successes in the end, you have to enjoy yourself along the way. Otherwise, it's really not going to be fulfilling to do that. And so part of that is ensuring that we have a great environment to work in with our colleagues, and that we're balancing time with our families and other things that are important to us. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have scientists that are happy and enjoying, enthusiastic coming to work, they're just not going to do their best work. And so that's what we aspire to do, is try to balance it. Is it perfect? No. Are there times where it's incredibly stressful? Yes, but there's a lot of great times along the way. So finding that balance, I guess I just echo the importance of that to continue to be successful.
What about you, Tamer? Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I would say optimizing your life for what gives you the most fulfillment, and creating the lifestyle that blends everything you need. Like, I'm literally blending the family life with Aspect now, because I'm going to work event in Whistler, but the kids are going to get donuts here, and they're coming with me to go to get skiing. So they're going to go ski in the weekend. I don't ski because I'm from Egypt originally, and my parents didn't do what I'm doing this weekend, even though they did so much more to put me in this position, which I'm grateful for. But yeah, just find the lifestyle that gives you the most fulfillment. That'll be different for everybody, but don't get caught in like trying to achieve what they tell you in a book, or what a life coach tells you. It's really about what gives you the most fulfillment.
And Brenda, I know you're probably a bit of a coach to some of the entrepreneurs you invest in. What do you tell them in this regard, in terms of the juggle between work and family life?
I think transparency about challenges is probably something that is very tough. So it's the relationships and the dynamics with the people you're working for and working with to make sure you understand where all of the demands are coming from. Transparency and asking for help. And I think that there is definitely the difference now versus when I started in the business of venture investing. There's a lot more optionality about what a work day looks like. And I think, for me, I've told my parents, and shout out to Lloyd in Mount Elgin, my dad now, where he probably sees me more often now because my career has so much travel and I always add time to it. So it's become a routine for me that I spend more time in person with my family and add that on. So you just keep navigating, and you make sure that you don't stay stuck in a situation that isn't a fit for you as an individual and for your family.
I want to thank, by the way, Melanie, for submitting that question. Okay, that's great, folks. Now we're going to have an interactive poll. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you could just move the slide forward, please. To participate, visit poll EV. You can see that on the screen, /LTS 2017, or text LTS 2017 to 37607 from your personal devices. If you don't have one, you can share your answer in the Q&A box. So here's the poll question on the slide. Which career pathway are you most interested in exploring further after hearing from the panelists? And you can see the answers there. So I'll wait for the answers to come in. While we do, I just want to say a few things. First of all, I'd love to thank our guests, Tamer, Chad, and Brenda, for participating today, and to all of you for joining us. I hope you found today's discussion stimulating, and that it's left you with more questions that you want to find answers for. A few of the things I wrote down that's really stuck with me. I love this from Tamer. If you're a geek, the future is yours. You need a tribe to get to where you're going. It's important to be collaborative and have a good team. Great science is like magic. I love that line. You can achieve the highest levels of medical science world right here in Canada, across the country. Very few things are impossible, and I think that's what guides a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of researchers, to find the treatments of the future. Don't fear failure. And this was a great insight from Brenda. Career can take many, many turns, and they're like steps along a great journey. And the future is interdisciplinary. So it's not just one area of science, but multiple areas. And there's lots of jobs for people who aren't scientists as well. So that's great. I hope you've all really enjoyed this, and keep asking questions and try to find those answers. Always be curious. So let's just lean in here. I'm going to take a look at where the poll's going. So which career pathway are you most interested in exploring further after hearing from the panelists? This is great. Healthcare or medical practice is way up high. It's 56. Still undecided, of course. I'm still undecided, and I've been a journalist for 30 years. Research or innovation is good. Business management or entrepreneurship, we certainly need lots of people like that. So thank you very much, folks. And I guess I'll throw things back to Conan for a few final words.
Thank you so much, Sean. And thank you, everyone, for participating. We really much appreciate your time. Thank you to our panelists. Just before we wrap up, we do have a few Zoom poll questions that's coming your way shortly. And we really appreciate it if you could share your thoughts with us, either individually or as a class. Also, we'd really appreciate it if you could fill out our survey forms by scanning the QR codes. The event recording will also be soon available after this symposium session. So really appreciate all of our panelists for joining today. A big shout out to all the organizations that have made today's events possible. Thank you to our event partners. This event is also generally supported by our Let's Talk Science visionary donors. So to wrap up, science is really everywhere. And the most important thing, as Sean mentioned, is to never stop questioning. So thank you all so much for joining, and hope you have a great day. Thank you all.